Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. And now, here's John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
Well, Brandon, we got a good one tonight. We have JT Heenan, who's the head baseball coach at Salem University in Salem, West Virginia, on the show. And I can't wait for the listeners to hear you talk about just like an electric factory. I mean, he is energetic. He's exactly the kind of coach we both would have loved to have played for.
Oh, there's no doubt. And you know, you mentioned him being kind of a young coach, but the things that he's implementing so far, he is so ahead of the curve, right? And the group at Salem is very lucky to have this guy. I would expect them to do very well under his leadership and the culture that he's setting. And I love how he really goes into you know, the way he manages the culture and the way he just doesn't compromise. I mean, these are the pillars, and he'll talk about, you know, controlling the pace, and it is the foundation of what he's doing there. And he's a stud, man. He's good, and the listeners need to again, I feel like we say it a lot, but you know, he's another just wealth of knowledge, and get ready to take some note.
Yeah, he's, for a young coach, he's also well beyond his years. And I don't want that to become the big theme of the program. Is just always, he's a young coach and he's really good for being a young coach. He's really good for just being a coach in general, because, yeah, right. I mean, he's got it figured out. And we wanted to have him on the show because he's got so much good information about developing a culture, something he's having to do. There being a new coach, relatively new coach at Salem University in West Virginia, Division II program. So take a listen to what JT Heenan has to say. I think you're going to enjoy it a lot. So Brandon, about 2 weeks ago, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, I get a call from a good friend of mine, Billy Reap, who you know Billy, and you've heard me talk about Billy plenty of times. Billy is probably, for the listeners, one of my favorite. You know, he's up there in my favorite people to talk to in general, but he's also very high on my favorite baseball people to talk to. And he's telling me, he said, hey, I need to, you know, I'm been asked by a friend of mine to get some hitting information, some different, you know, routine stuff put together. And I just want to get your input on this. He said, you'd love this guy. He's a you know, college baseball coach here locally at Salem University. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do some stuff. So I started thinking about it. I was like, you know, I don't know, let me talk to him first, because there's some of the things that I could just provide from a skills and strategy standpoint. But if there's no context, you almost do more harm than good.
Sure.
Well, I reach out to our next guest and I talked to him on the phone. And I think it was probably about 15 minutes after I got off the phone with him that I called you and said, first of all, there's nothing I can offer him. I mean, let's get that clear. And then it was like, and oh, by the way, I want you to be a guest on the show this week. So we're JT Heenan, who is the head baseball coach at Salem University. Thanks for being on our show.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I mean, you offered a lot of information to me. We just found out we're a lot alike over that phone conversation, I guess. Which is
it's always a good thing, because you know, as we talked about, it's just nice to talk baseball with people, and especially when you're talking about that mental side of it and just building culture, leadership, you know, all of the things that Brandon and I try to hit on this show and our guests are talking about all the time. And I jokingly said that, but I actually text Billy as well, coach, and told him, I said, man, I said, that guy was really, really impressive. I said, you know, and I honestly, I didn't have any, it wasn't like I was like, oh, we need to get guests on the show or anything. But after that conversation, I really believe, and that's why I'm so excited for the listeners to hear you tonight, really believe there's a lot of things that you have to offer from a perspective of somebody who's not just getting into coaching, because you've been into coaching, you've done some amateur things and coached at the college level and with WVU and stuff, but specifically just starting out a program for yourself, being that you're, tell us a little bit about that. So this is going to be your second year at Salem.
Yeah. So this will be my second year as head coach at Salem. First year was, as everyone knows, the COVID year. So hoping a little bit more normal this year. But I came on as an assistant in January of 2020, and then that season got cut short. And then over the summer was promoted as head coach. So
yeah. That's pretty cool. So how did that come about? How did you even get to Salem? I mean, you went to WVU originally from Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, correct?
Yeah. So when I was from Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, I was actually talking to a recruit the other day about this. When I was a senior, I thought my last time doing anything baseball was my last game senior year, because I wasn't recruited out of high school. So I remember I hit like a single in a playoff game. I was like, wow, that's my last at bat. And so I go to West Virginia University for school, do a lot of different things. I do like student government. I was a residence assistant. But when I came back my freshman year, my dad's like, you need to try out. There was called the West Shore Twilight League. It was like a summer ball team. And I grew up watching. He's like, you should try out. And I was like, well, I haven't played. So I got in shape and I tried out, ended up making the team. Well, it turns out that was like the best team in the league. So I just watched the whole summer, but I loved it. So I actually started coaching Legion too. So I coached like my Legion team. And then when I got back my sophomore year, I stayed in shape. And then I went back and I was really playing well. Like I matured physically, mentally, and I became a much better player. And then at the end of the one summer, as I was coaching and playing, I had a couple Division I guys that I played with and played against. They're like, you should try out at West Virginia. And I was like, well, I mean, what do I have to lose? I'm already going to school there. I'm already paying full price. I mean, I might as well play baseball while I'm there. So I just kept in shape. A lot of days working out on my own and throwing into a net and hitting off a tee. And I went to tryouts and literally had the best day of my life. And I was a catcher. So you guys, baseball guys, they always need catchers.
Absolutely.
I had no business being on a Big 12 baseball field, obviously, but I mean, I played really well, and Coach Mays was like, hey, do you want to come back tomorrow? You're going to catch every arm. I said, yeah. So I caught every arm. They literally gave me a round of applause after practice. They're like, there's no way he's going to come back. I think it was like the thought process. Like I was just getting, like there was a hole in my glove. Like literally they blew a hole in my glove. So I went to Dick's Sporting Goods the next day, came back, and the same thing, came back, and then I just told him, I was like, hey, I'm just going to keep showing up until you tell me not to leave. I had one at bat against Marshall. That was like I grounded out. I'll tell my grandkids I smoked it off with somebody, but
sure, of course.
Yeah, but that turned into, so that was, I finished my senior year, ended up, traveling with the team and just caught pens, and going into my senior year, we were at Oklahoma, I remember, and Coach Mays was like, hey, would you want to come back and help run camps? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I'll help. I'll do whatever I can. I mean, I love this. Like you can imagine, as a guy who, wasn't in college baseball at all, to the flipping the switch to the Big 12. I was like, this is incredible.
Right.
So I go to help out with camps and do the operation stuff. And then our volunteer got another job.
Wow.
So I ended up falling into I'm running at that time. You could do travel camps. So I was running travel camps for West Virginia for right after my senior year of playing. Well, I should say watching, but I mean, right after my senior year. So it was kind of like a baptism by fire. And then luckily for me, we ended up hiring Cody Atkinson, who I mentioned to you is now the Rangers hitting coordinator. Mm-hmm. And he was our volunteer. So him and I, we called ourselves the peons. We were at the bottom of the barrel. We did everything together, like lessons, throwing BP, setting up the field. He's like, if he's not the second best, he's the best hitting guy in the world. I mean, so I learned so much just from, because I was with him, you guys know, 12, 13 hours a day.
Yeah.
And then just being under his tutelage and being at West Virginia, I was going to go back as the director of operations, but decided this isn't what I wanted. I want to coach. So I went and taught special education. And just honestly so the next 2-3 years, I had a lot of job opportunities, but I was teaching. And during COVID, I turned around and I had like a cohort of like, it was like 11 college players, 7 of which were Division I. It was like high school kids. And then I had 5 pro guys at one point that I was working with all at one time.
Wow.
Just from like, and I was like, I mean, you can imagine, at one point I was like, why are they here? You know what I mean? Like, why are they listening to me? But it was just a matter of relationships, and over time, just working with guys and, you know, having that experience with Cody really introduced me to people. So like in COVID, like when the heat of COVID, when pro ball wasn't going on, I set up live at bat in Morgantown. And at one point we had 4 big league arms. We had Randy Dobnak, Michael Groves in AA. We had David Carpenter and Harrison Musgrave all through. And I caught because I could still, it was like a year and a half ago. And then we had 6 pro hitters, and then we had like 15 to 20 college hitters and then high school guys. And I ended up working with all, you know, but so so doing all that stuff, I got into prep baseball report, and I coached a amateur team, the Appalachian Aces, and we would travel and play college teams. Okay. So every weekend it was like a college schedule. We would drive to like AB. Well, we never played AB.
So was this like a
Concord,
fall?
Charleston.
Was it like a fall ball schedule? So all of their normal, when everyone's looking to get games, they're tired of playing themselves, you know, for all the fall. And so now you guys are coming in, which is great. I mean, I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah. So Josh Kirkendall is the director of scouting for PBR West Virginia. Came up with it, and we just got in contact, and we're great friends now. But so I coached this team with him. So we would go to, you know, these teams and get whipped, and then we ended up starting like beating everybody. So like we went and played. We had a weekend where we swept Salem and we swept Ohio Valley, and that's how I got like kind of introduced to Salem. Wow. We took a group of high school kids and swept them.
Wow.
So then fast forward to the next year. So this was fall of 19. I took that same team there, like different group of kids. And then a month and a half later, Coach Rouse, who's my predecessor, called me and offered me the assistant job. And then he took another job, and, you know, they didn't even interview anybody. They promoted me. I was very, very lucky.
Wow.
He's being a little humble here, Brandon, because the athletic director says in this press conference that it was an easy decision. He's like, you know, you start looking around at who you could go after. Maybe there's some people you might want to open up the candidate pool. And he said, the best baseball mind we have that I've been around is the guy that's right here, JT Heenan. So, you know, all of a sudden now that becomes an easy decision for Salem. But one thing I want to mention, and we can't just gloss over this. If I understand correctly, Randy Mazey has managers and volunteer assistants who have now, in just a matter of 2 years, one's a hitting coordinator for the Texas Rangers. Another one happens to just be a head baseball coach at Salem University. So no big, I mean, if that's your volleys and that's your managers, right. You're doing all right.
Yeah. That coaching staff was pretty impressive. I mean, there's a lot of those guys are in my weddings and I'm in theirs, but
a small world thing for Brandon and I is Randy Mazey was at Charleston Southern. So Brandon and I both played at College Charleston. Randy Mazey was at Charleston Southern when we were playing at the College of Charleston. So we knew Randy before he even got up there. And that staff, you know, you've got Carl Kuhn, who was a pitching coach at the University of Virginia, who's now the head baseball coach at Radford, was also on that staff down there at Charleston Southern. So they weren't doing too bad either. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So you end up getting the job at Salem. And you now all of a sudden it's like, okay, where do we go from here? I mean, where did the coaching piece come in? Where was that influence growing up? Was that something you just always knew you wanted to be, or was it just like after you started helping out with some of the teams, you just got the bug?
It started in high school. Like what got me into like teaching and coaching was I had a football coach who was like, hey, during study hall, can you come teach kids to swim? And I was like, yeah, it gets me out of sitting in study hall. And I got there, and it was actually students with special needs. So I ended up teaching students with special needs how to swim in high school, and I ended up getting like all my buddies to come do it with me. And I was like, man, I think I want to teach. And then when I was done playing, you know, a coach that I really looked up to, Tim Bianchi, he's like, hey, would you be my assistant for the Legion team? And I was like, I don't know if I want to. And I loved it. I think part of it, to be honest, was because I was never a good player. So like, I think I was talking to a friend of mine. Yeah. Like, I mean, obviously I could get by and I had some ability, but I think just being a guy who had to be a really good teammate, like that was a role I always took on well. It made me really prepared to coach. And I mean, I think it's just super fulfilling. So in high school, and I started coaching Legion ball, and then WVU was just kind of like, if they were like, hey, go stand on your head for 30 minutes, I would have done it. But then I just realized I really enjoyed it.
So as you're coming up, JT, at what point do you realize the importance of culture? Because I know we'll get into some of what you're doing there at Salem, which is like we were talking about. It's wildly impressive that you are adopting this, and John and I love to talk to what I would consider kind of those frontline people, right? The coaches and the players that are taking the things that more of the clinician folks that are laying things out and going, this is really kind of the best business practice, so to speak, right? And you guys are actually doing it. But at what point do you realize the importance of culture within the team? Is it something that you learned from Coach Bianchi? Is it something that you really start picking up at WVU, or is it just, where does that come into play?
I would say it wasn't like a conscious effort until WVU. So when in high school with Coach Bianchi, I mean, he taught us all those things, but I didn't, like you guys, like guided meditation and stuff, like you hear people say, take a breath, or you'll see, but like once you start actively practicing it, it becomes a lot easier. So I would say, like, I was doing a lot of these practices in high school and like when I was playing summer ball in college, but so we get to West Virginia and Brian Kane comes in the fall. And funny story quickly about, so that day he came, so we had I'm like a walk-on like catcher, hit BP. I got to show up like 4 hours early. So I show up to I forget what time the practice was, but I huff over after class. I literally like go in, nobody's there yet. Like I'm like fired up. I'm like, I'm going to be the first one here. You know what I mean? So I set up BP. I put like a cage up and a tee, and I'm hitting off the tee. And then I realized I'm like really sweating, and I turn around, there's nobody around. And I was like, I don't think we have practice today. So my key card doesn't swipe me into the building. So I had to throw my catcher's gear over the wall and climb the fence at a Mon County ballpark to leave. So this is a fall practice. This is like my first fall, because I texted one of the guys on the team, was like, hey, do we have practice? Because I'm not in the group me yet. I haven't officially made it. And they were like, no, it got canceled. So I'm like, crap. So I jumped the fence and, I go to my car, and first time in my life I put icy hot on my knees because I caught all those bullpens, and I'm like, man, my legs are beat up. This will be great. I'll get to rest for a day. As I'm walking into the dorms, Cole Austin, who was one of our players, he finishing up playing in Arkansas, walks out and goes, hey, we got practice. I'm like, you got to be
No way.
So I turn back around. We drive up together, and it's Brian Kane's there. He goes, our coaches sit us in the locker room. They're like, all right, everyone have a seat. And Kaner comes out of the like thunderstruck clapping, and we do the whole energy scrimmage, everything. And that experience, just like learning, his pillars for us, like I have PACE, his was FACE. It was pride, humble confidence, accountability, commitment, and then energy. But so that, and then that really introduced, I was like, that was a whole new world for me, like the meditation and just being aware of all those things, the scheduling. And then honestly, when Cody came in my grad year, he really taught me how to be where my feet are. Because we were struggling together, but I mean, obviously struggling in the Big 12 is relative, but you get what I'm saying? Like you're in a lower level. I mean, it was those two experiences alone really introduced me to like, okay, this is what I want to do. And then from that point forward, I remember, I think it was Cody who told me this. So when I was a GA, I was preparing for when I'm a head coach. I was collecting all my binder information, every resource BP plan I could have. So when I got to that interview in Salem, I think the reason they're like, well, we have to hire him is because I had stuff accumulated for 4 years. I was like, I have to get this. I have everything planned out for the next 4 years because I knew that's what I needed to do. So,
Did you model when you realize, I need to really focus in on culture almost as a foundation, right? Did you try to model that after a particular culture? Was it a coach that you really respected that you saw or maybe you read about?
So my grad year, I try to do a really good job of like talking to as many of the other coaches we played as much as possible. So like you can imagine, like that's, we played Tech, Texas,
Right.
TCU. So I just kind of reflecting off of some of their volunteers and lower assistants.
Yeah.
When we were at the Big 12 tournament, I ended up lifting weights every day with Texas Tech's volunteer. I learned so much just from, the 45 minutes we spent in the hotel weight room. You know what I mean?
Right.
3 or 4 times. But the biggest one outside of just like speaking with those guys is P.J. Fleck he was at Western Michigan, now at Minnesota football.
Yeah.
Like
row the boat.
Row the boat. Yeah, that really. I remember sitting on the bus with Cody and Chase Illig, he's in Double A with the Yankees. But I'd be sitting there, I'd be writing out like my row the boat, and I'd be like, Cody, what do you think of this? Like, and he'd be like, yeah, that kind of stinks. And then I come back and I try to figure. And I remember Chase Illig and I listening to the 12 Pillars of Peak Performance.
Yeah.
Audio thing. You know what I mean? So, but those are really but I knew. So at one point I was like, well, why don't I just row the boat? Why don't that? But I was like, that's not mine. You know what I mean? That's not
right.
I feel I won't be able to master it at the highest level if it's not something I authentically, I believe in it, but you know what I'm saying? Like authentically created. So that's where Control the Pace made a lot more sense for me, and the baseball I wanted to promote, and how we wanted to play the game.
I got to tell you, it's such a high level thought to even be at the age that you were when you're riding the buses and you're already starting to think and basically build your program on those bus rides is so cool. I mean, I almost, as you're talking about PJ Fleck, I'm almost thinking to myself, one of these days, somebody's going to be, having another interview with you, and it's going to be at some big time program, and you'll be reflecting back on those moments, because PJ Fleck had to start row the boat somewhere, right? And so the fact that you've created, Control the Pace, and really were so intentional about those 4 building blocks, like how did those come about? Like maybe talk to listeners about those 4, what PACE is the acronym for.
Yeah. So, Control the Pace so we want to control the pace of play, but PACE stands for positivity, accountability, communication, and energy. So those 4 pillars to me were obviously really important for baseball, but I authentically was like, these are probably the 4 most important pillars in my life that changed me. So I was like, if I'm going to have a group of, anywhere from 35 to 60 players and 6 or 7 staff members, if I can teach them, okay, this is why we need to do this is how we do it, and this is what we're doing. If you're more positive, you're more accountable, and communicate better, and you have a lot of energy in your life, you're going to be a lot more successful, but also feel fulfilled and be happy. So P is positivity, and every one of these we define. So I was saying to our basketball coach on campus today, I was like, I'll just go up to kids and be like, what's positivity? And like in practice, and they can't tell me. I do burpees with them, because it's to me, it's like, this is what we live. This is what we live. It's defined as how so P is positivity, which is be an adder. So no matter the setting, you must add value. I actually have it on my wrist. I have it right here. I've, be an adder. So whether we're out on the field, if you are in class, if you're in the, community. So I even list the practices of an adder. So I'll be like I have listed on that Salem baseball expectation sheet that I think I sent you, John, things you'll see adders do. So picking up trash, we sweep the dugouts everywhere we go. So we lose by 15, which we did a lot this year. If we lose, we are still sweeping out the dugout after the game. If we win by 10, which we did that as well, we'll sweep out the dugout. We clean up all the trash. So it could be holding the door, any number of those things. So accountability. Do you want to just keep going?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Accountability is don't talk about it, be about it. So I think a lot of with me personally, it was like everyone talks about accountability, but like, what is it? So to me, I say accountability is don't talk about it, be about it. So if you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. So you'll hear a lot of guys as they're like, hey, I'm going to be the best player on the team. I'm like, okay, well, you're going to be the first one there to take extra swings. Are you going to be the one, doing all your dry work, all your front toss, all your tee work? Hey, I'm going to be really hardworking. What does that look like? So then we list out, what is accountability? It's turning all your assignments on time. It's doing your daily dominator every day. And I'll touch upon that. But, so we have like checks and balances for all that as well. Communication. is intentional dialogue and body language. So what that means is, from a dialogue standpoint, we don't allow complaining. We don't allow negative self-talk. So it's just a matter of, if we hear it, we shut it down or you leave. And then the body language aspect is probably I think the biggest separator for us and the hardest thing for guys to get when they get here. And we ended up doing a lot of burpees when we start. So we don't allow arms crossed or hands on hips. I read, and I can't cite my sources, I forgot, but it was a book called Body Language I read. It's like 60 to 70% of your communication is done through nonverbals. So I would tell this to my special education class too, because I taught BD, so behavior. If you're sitting and your head's down, or you flip me what you're saying, you don't have to say a word. You know what I mean? So with from a standpoint of body language with our guys, if I say, if you take a pitch down the middle and my hands are on my hips, my foot's pointed, I'm tapping my foot, I don't have to say anything.
Right.
So if I'm talking and your arms are crossed and your shoulders are down, that body language doesn't fly. So, and we want actions to come before, if we can't control what happens, but we control how we react.
Yeah, it's funny. When my son played football at JMU, and they had a strength coach, Big John, and he used to always talk about rest strong. That was a big thing for him, was rest strong. Like, don't rest with your hands down on your knees and bent over and stuff like that. When you're going to rest, because we're going to work you hard, I want you resting shoulders back, but I want you resting. I want you resting strong. And that was something that resonated with him, and it clearly resonated with me, because I always thought, when you're that intentional about something like nonverbals or how you rest, that is something that people are going to start paying attention to.
Well, but even as a competitor, right? I mean, we all played. If I could look out there and I saw that, we win. I'm in the kitchen and I'm making dessert. Like, it's over, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and as a coach, I mean, I still do it with my son's teams. If we see that pitcher start kicking dirt and that head's, little dirt dauber, I pull him in and go, listen, here's your inning right here.
Yeah.
This is where you get to put your foot on their throat, because they're done. They're mentally, they checked out. Everybody's mad at each other. Let's put the wood to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, obviously I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's something we have to work through, but what I found, and you guys have seen as well, if the whole environment values it, it weeds itself out easy.
Yeah.
So what I found with the issue was, I'm across the field and I have to tell a guy across the field, hey, take your hands off your hips. But if there's 5 other guys around him, those guys should be like, hey, take your hands off your hips.
Right.
So again, it's teaching them a replacement behavior: shoulders back, heads up, eyes up, and you put hands in front or hands behind. But the last thing we want to do is show that, that we're not locked in or we're not focused. We actually do like the air sequence too. So if you make an air, you own it, you pivot, and you move on. So own it is, you tap your chest twice, you say, that's on me, you pivot, you find a teammate, you say, I got you, and they say it back, and then you turn to the outfield, tell them how many outs you have. So again, all of this stuff, to me, the communication aspect is a form of accountability. If a guy is in the field, he makes an error and he doesn't hit the air sequence, I got to take him out. He's not ready for the next ball to come to him. Or if a guy's in the box and he doesn't hit his red light routine, he's not ready to hit. I can't have him come up in the 9th inning when I need someone to drive in a run. So it's
I love that.
In place.
I love that system, JT, because the thing from a mental skill standpoint that I really like about that is, in order for me to go through that air sequence, I have to take my mind off of what just happened. It's shifting it's like taking a reset breath. It's like doing something conscious that I have to think about, makes me not be able to focus, because my mind's not going to be able to focus 2 things at one time. So when I go through that sequence, hopefully by the time that sequence is over, I've already forgotten about this, error that just took place. And it just lets me kind of do something physically that's going to help me think next pitch, let's go. Yeah, that's really good.
It helps. Yeah, it helps the pitchers too. I found the pitchers really liked it, that, you want to have the confidence to, hey, I'm going to let this guy put it in place so my defense can do the work. There's a different level of confidence if, a guy makes a mistake and you make that negative into a positive, where you can see he has a system in place and then he has a routine he can go to clean that up immediately. It's like, hey, give me another one. You know what I mean? As opposed to, I don't know if I want to hit it to X, Y, or Z because he's not paying attention or he's upset about the last play.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And then E for energy. That's a great one.
Yeah. E is never let circumstance, it's energy, never let circumstance dictate behavior. So whether we are up 10 or down 10, we need to be the same team. So my energy is obviously going to be different than someone else's. But at the end of the day, the form of accountability is you need to show up and be the same person.
Right.
Because that's what we expect. That's what that's what we value. So I talk the whole game. I get, and how we hold it accountable for our guys in game is you have to say 3 to 5 words between every pitch. It can be like, hey, throw a strike here. It can be, hey, make a play, or so what, next pitch. That's 3 words.
Okay.
So that's the only form of accountability we have. That's how you represent, hey, I'm locked in. That's the energy towards us being better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to? I can kind of go through each side of the ball.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely want you to hit that because you talk about that pace carrying over into defense, and so talk to the listeners a little bit about how you're making that. Because what I love about this system, and for you listeners, the reason, especially you coaches out there, the reason that I wanted JT to go through all of these is anytime you can be that intentional about anything you're expecting from your program, your team, it's the whole, they respect what you inspect. And if you're doing these things and you're putting intention behind it and you're being deliberate about everything, every action, all the way down to, and you'll hear him talk about this, how you walk to the plate, that's all great stuff. So yeah, definitely let's start to unpack some of those things on the defensive side, like comfortable at being uncomfortable.
Yeah. So, and like we talked about, so I can say all this stuff. Like I can be like, hey, we're positive, we are accountable. But at the end of the day, if there isn't some sort of like accountability for me or some sort of action that follows it, like if I'm not reinforcing it every day, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So for the defense, like our mantra is we want to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So how we control that is we are in and out. Like, so as soon as if it's a strike 3 for our hitter, 60 seconds, the next pitch, our pitcher is ready to throw the next pitch. So what that looks like is we have everybody on the bench knows who they're picking up. Every guy needs to get 3 throws. So if I'm a second baseman, I need to get 3 throws to the first baseman, shortstop, third baseman. Outfielders need 3 throws. 5 pitches from the pitcher. 5th pitch is less than a 2.1 to second. Shortstop, third baseman, back to the pitcher, 1 minute. So how we reinforce that in practice is we time it. It's like I just told them, I'm like, let's go. And we, the first couple times you can imagine people are like running into each other, but it was a huge advantage in the games as we played because 1, it looks really good, to be honest. Like we are extremely organized. We have guys flying around with a purpose and they can prepare at a really high level. But 2, you got a guy on deck who like, he literally just got in there and the umpire's like, let's go.
Yep.
Let's go get him in the box. And I know personally, I mean, especially if you have a guy on the mound who's not blowing anybody away, it's a huge advantage to get strike 1.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
if us ending off in 60 seconds makes him uncomfortable enough to get strike 1, we're all about it.
Yeah.
And so once they're on, it's constant communication. So what we require is every position guy says 3 to 5 words in between pitches. Like I said, it can be anything, something positive to your pitcher, let them know how many outs, anything. Every guy has a pre-pitch routine. So it can be their green light or their pre-step pitch, like their hop. We sprint everywhere, and then we want the pitchers to deliver in less than 12 seconds. So from glove to glove, it should be 12 seconds because anything more or less is they're out of their routine.
Yeah.
So it's, plus we use wrist guards to relay in signs. As soon as he gets it back, he checks, he finds it. And that time the pitcher should have it, whatever his green light routine is, and go. Now, if he hits a red light, we make an adjustment on that time.
Right.
But if we can speed up that batter in any way, we're in a huge advantage.
For the listeners, JT, and I'm pretty sure I know where you are with this, but explain red light, what you're meaning by that.
Yeah. So, going back, like the Ken Revisa, like the green and green, yellow,
Yep.
red light, identifying when you need to hit a red light. So for us, how I made it tangible is every guy has a green light routine. So when they are going good, this is my routine I hit between every pitch. So you have one in the field, you have one in the mound, you have one in the box. So what we do is how we hold them accountable to it is we have them write it out. Like we teach them what they look like. We have them write it out. We put it on our Google Drive. And then it's just like, hey, I have this written in my hitter's journal or my pitching journal. The coach has it. So I know, like, hey, he's hitting his green. He's good to go. So we say, if you're at a yellow or you need to hit a red, we have a different routine. So I always say, you don't do the same thing at a green and a red light. I hope not. You're going to get a lot of car accidents if you do. You need to do something different to tell your body and to tell yourself, hey, I need to reset so I can prepare to execute at a higher level. And I would say maybe it's a big play in the game. Maybe you're just stressed out. I don't care if you need to hit a red light, you need to have, like, if there's a nail, I need a hammer to hammer it in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge, like, the big thing is, like, what I was really proud of this year was you would hear guys from the dugout, like a bad call from the umpire, rather than arguing, they'd be like, hey, hit a red light.
Wow.
Like that was the verbiage. Hey, hit a red light. Rather than come on, blue, it was, hey, hit a red light. So what? And, because that's what we reinforce constantly, because rather than focusing on what we can't control, we're focusing on that was tough. Let's take care of it how we know how.
Right. No, that's good.
But so offensively, it's our goal is to win every pitch. So what that looks like is we're constantly timing the pitcher 4 batters deep. So we have essentially stations is where you go and what's set up. So if you're 4 batters back, you're by the helmet well. You can talk about the at bat. You can go over what you want to do. We actually have a visualization bucket that they can sit there and visualize their at bat. And we have a designated area that's taped off where they can go through sim. So we have guys who are like, I always say, if you want to pinch hit, just stand by me, time up the batter. Stand in the sim at bat area. There's a very good chance I'm going to turn and be like, he's locked in. Let's go. I'll make an emotional decision every time because that guy's ready to go. But so we have, and then when you're in the hole, helmets on, batting gloves, bat in hand, you're between like the entranceway timing. And then when you are on deck, you are going through the entire bat with the hitter. So you're going. So if it's a take and it's a bad call, you're hitting a red light with that hitter. If it's you can get your swing off and hit a double when he doesn't hit it, but you're going through that at bat. So then you should have at least have had 3 at bats to that point before you step up. I mean, and then you guys said this on a prior podcast. You could have, if you pinch hit in the 9th inning, you can have the minimum of at least 20, 26.
Absolutely.
And I'm huge. And that's something, I'm big on, because I always say your brain can't tell the difference between a real rep and a visual rep.
Yeah,
and I truly believe that. So even if it's a third of a rep, if you time up 3 pitches, that's the same as you being in 1 in the box. I'll take that every time.
Yeah. I'm just imagining Alan Jaeger just pulled over with a huge smile on his face.
He's like, so happy right now. He's so happy. He's like, JT gets it.
When he talks about that visualization bucket, I was just thinking about Alan probably just like, it's like a bell ring and an angel gets its wings kind of a thing.
But it's so interesting to hear that though, JT, again, because last week we talked to Alan and he's giving us ways to practice it. And here you are implementing it. And it does as a baseball guy, it does my heart well to hear how coaches and I'll be, straight up, there aren't many coaches like you out there. And so a huge tip of the cap to you, but just to hear that there are coaches out there implementing this for their players is huge. It is so big. And so I don't want to get you off your flow, but I know you also talk about base running and some of the other stuff as far as your philosophy goes as well, right?
Yeah. But back to the visualization bucket, we have a reset bucket too. So like if you're like, it's almost like, hey, like like you flush the toilet on.
Right. Yeah.
I set up, and this was when I was an assistant, I originally came up with this. I put a bucket. It's like, hey, this is where you need to go. And the funniest thing ever, this kid comes up and he goes, JT, I feel worse every time I sit on the reset bucket. And I was like, then don't sit on it.
Right.
Like, don't sit on the reset bucket.
I don't have another bucket.
But I was just like, you don't have to sit there. It's not timeout. It's just if you want to go take a walk, go take a walk. That's fine.
Yeah.
But So I mean,
but you know what's
again,
so great about this is, and I applaud you for this, because one of the things that happens is it's so easy, especially on a team like a with a sport like baseball, and you have 35, 40 people on teams, it's so easy to, I don't want to say get bored or anything, but just not maybe it be as dialed in, because if you don't feel like there's a role for you or you don't have something going on, but between 60 seconds on and off and picking people up and making sure everybody's assigned to a person, and between being four batters deep and on the offense and getting ready. I mean, if you're sitting on that Salem University bench, man, you have to be dialed in to do something, because I can tell you one thing: sitting there is not an option. Just sitting there, not being dialed in and engaged, is not an option on JT's teams.
Yeah, and we actually list like the dialogue we need to hear. So like, back on a pickoff, get over on a ground ball, up on a fly ball. We have that posted in the dugout. So if we're like, we would do 27 outs, and sometimes I'll hit a ground ball to the right side and I'll watch as I hit it. And if someone doesn't yell it, we start over, because that participation is equally as important as getting the out. I mean, that's my opinion. And unfortunately, when it comes to communication and being locked in, I'm a dictator on that. If every guy isn't locked into the moment, like I swear I've guys who text me like, I still can't put my hands on my hips. And there's guys who text me and say, like, a ball went up in the air and I was watching a game and I yelled up.
Yeah,
I was in the crowd.
I was in the crowd.
But at the end of the day, that's extremely important, because it gives them ownership to what's going on. But if I'm on the field, so offensively, another standard we have is you have to get to first base in less than 5 seconds. So you need to run, break down, and look right in less than 5. Now, to me, that's a dedication to your teammates. What are you saying to the other 30 guys on the bench if you can't run a ground ball out?
Right.
You're saying, I don't value this 90 feet as much as you would.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Going back to the last two things I have, we talked about going to the plate. We call it an octagon walk. So like, if you're walking to the octagon, that's how we want you to walk to the plate. So we go head up, eyes up, shoulders up. We put barrel in the dominant hand. And if you're really a big dog, you stare at the pitcher the whole way. So some guys are not comfortable with it, but other guys can't be down. So you go through your green light, and so we want to speed up the pace defensively. We're slowing it way down offensively.
Yeah.
So it's your box. So then we have like we talked about, green and red light routines in the box. And the last thing, we adopted this last year. Mississippi State does it as well. So you have two at bats. You have your at bat before 2 strikes, and then you have your 2 strike at bat. When you get to 2 strikes, you pound your chest twice to the dugout. Every guy in the dugout pounds it back. We had a senior last year, senior DH Austin Wetzel. I swear to God, he was going to put a hole in his chest every time there's 2 strikes. He would pound 2 strikes. He'd go to the dugout like this. It was over. Like and so it was something they loved, because again, it's another thing where it gets everyone involved, and you're identifying to your teammates, hey, now I got to do whatever I can to put a ball in play.
Yeah.
So again, it's another form of accountability. And then we talked about like base running. Admittedly, things I think are like the weakest part of this pace is the base running part. But it's controlled chaos. It's where we want to be intentionally aggression. So like, if he doesn't stop our feet, we're gonna take another base. So again, we're trying to make the pitcher focus away from the hitter, because he's trying to slow the game down. I'm trying to speed him up. So then he's watching the base runner. He's not focused on the hitter, who's now locked in because he just hit his red light. And then I call it like the snake in the grass theory. So if you can't see the snake in the grass, so we teach like, put the hand out when he's looking, when he looks back. And then, obviously our slowest guy's not going to take a lot of bases, but
he has plenty of time to put his hand out.
Yeah, he does. He does.
Well, one of the things that struck me, and it's something that as a coach I always impressed upon base runners, was run with great intention. And you're coming out of the box, have the expectation you're getting a double until you can't get a double. And you have this same thing about you're scoring until I stop you.
I love that.
Yeah, it's like, let's go. Like, that has a different approach to running the bases. From first to third, it's easy to get first to third if my intention is to score, and all of a sudden now I'm getting the stop sign.
Yeah, we actually, that's one of the first things we practice is just, we'll put a ball in the gap, and I'll coach a third and I'll actually model it. And I look like an idiot, but I'll round third and I'll go full speed until someone stops me. And then I'll literally like drop to the ground and go back before my assistant can tag me out. I'm like, or, you know, I'll go and I'll just keep going and I'm safe at a play at the plate. And it's the thought process of I have no chance of being safe at the plate if I slow down, but I can always stop. I was like, I'll tackle you in the third base box and bring you back to third. But if the ball's hitting, if the base hit and you're like, well, I'm just getting to third, then we have no choice. We can't score you.
Yeah. Have you gotten to the point, JT, where you're recruiting for this? Like you have that vision in your mind now of what it's going to take to, because not everybody can do this. Like it's going to take a player who's number one, willing to, do some of the things and themselves get outside of a comfort zone. But I'm sure at this point, I mean, you're only year 2 as the head coach there, but it's still one of those things that you almost have to probably start thinking, these are the guys, this is what that looks like. This is the person for us here at Salem.
Yeah, it's definitely in the whole recruiting process. We're extremely upfront about this. So we go over like, hey, if you're on this team, I mean, these are all everything I just said. These are the expectations on the field, and then we even dive into like that's only half of what we expect off the field. So like off the field. So we say, and this is 1% of your day. I think this was in a Brian King. 1% of your day is like 15 minutes. It's like 14 minutes, 24 seconds.
14, 40, 24. Yep.
So what the example I give to our guys is you're going to spend 5 to 20 minutes a day making yourself better that makes us better. So off the baseball field, you're going to spend anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. So what we require is every single day you read the Daily Dominator. So that's 365 days. It's a Brian Kane 1-day reader. You make your bed every day. So I'm not going to check your bed. I don't go to their rooms and check it. But you write down 3 things you're grateful for. So every day in their binder, they write down 3 things they're grateful for. They journal on the Daily Dominator. And then and also if we have a meeting, they journal on that as well. They list any form of exercise they did that day. They list what form of meditation they did. So we do a guided meditation before every practice. But if they're on their own, it can be as simple as I took 3 breaths after lunch. I mean, I don't expect I took a 30-minute meditation on a mountaintop. I just expect some sort of active practice. You write down a random act of kindness, and then every day we check their binder. So before they come to practice, it's they open that thing up. I check that they completed it. Now, my thought process, honestly, admittingly, as a coach, I was like, look, I don't want to check these every day because I don't want to make it, I don't want to make it to they have to do it. But I had some players I respected, and they're like, honestly, coach, like, we like that you check it. Yeah. We like that you guys check it because it's a form, like I can sit there and reflect with them rather than almost like, oh, it's the expectation, you got to go do it. It turned into like a conversation of like, hey, I got this from the Daily Dominator today. What did you get? So every single day, that's what we expect them to do, to reinforce like, hey, this is the culture we want to promote.
Well, you just hit it, right? Because one of the things that you talk about is culture equals connecting people. And when as I know what you're saying from as a coach, you don't want to necessarily be a micromanager, but it also, as a coach, gives you some insight and kind of some intimacy into, these are the things that make JT grateful, right? These are the things. Mm-hmm. So it lets you kind of get inside their head a little bit, which can't do anything but help you as a coach to relate and therefore bringing out the most out of them. So I think that's tremendous.
It personalizes you.
Absolutely.
I definitely agree with that. And the other thing that what people don't realize about this, JT, is that it's not about doing all of these things daily. It's about developing that discipline it takes to do all these things daily. Like that's where people might be like, wow, that's a lot of things you have to do. Look, you could, even if it's 5 things, it's the fact that you're doing something every day and having to have the discipline to do it, because not everybody is going to be disciplined enough to do that. They may say they want to do it, but they're not going to be disciplined.
But to that point too, John, it's not only having the discipline to do it for yourself, but you're doing it for the discipline of everybody else on the team, right? Yeah. It makes the entire team better. So that's amazing.
No, I was just going to ask you. So to that end, how do you, they talk all the time about you reward the behaviors you wish to see repeated. How are you rewarding? What are some ways that you're highlighting? Maybe, I know that Gary Gilmore at Coastal Carolina, he has the two pillars of selfless and relentless, and you have the carpet in the clubhouse. And anytime somebody does something that demonstrates that, he's bringing them to that carpet. Are there ways that, at Bridgewater College softball, Coach Meg, she uses the dog tags. What are you doing that's kind of reinforcing some of these things?
Yeah. So, big thing is I'm really big on energy, big on juice. So we really revolve around in practice, it's like, hey, bring a lot of juice, be juiceful, be useful. So practice every day if you provide the most juice. So if you have your binder done, so it's not like you had necessarily the best day, but we had a kid, he's now a coach on my staff. He's a graduate assistant. His name's Andrew Friend. The best teammate, he would be dripping sweat at the end of every practice because there's a ground ball in BP. He's like Superman after to get it. So we give a juice box at the end of every practice to the guy who has the most juice.
I love that.
So a coach goes up and says, hey, I think so-and-so, they really did this well today. Come get it. And they go in front of the whole team and they give a speech. It can be anything. So a lot of guys are slamming it off their head. Some guys cut it open and drink it. But at the end of the day, the dialogue was man, I really want to, I want to get the juice box. And you'll hear guys on the way out, I'm getting it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because it's not you'll see guys through practice, run, and I'll say running off the field. And I'll be like, so, Alan wants a juice box. And then crap, I need to get the juice box. So, yeah. but on a more serious level, how we took that to the next level this year, was we put the guys in 4 different groups. And we have the 4 pillars: positivity, accountability, communication, energy. And we actually scaffolded it out to everything.
Nice.
So it's accountability is academics. We check that every week. Positivity is performance. So we do daily challenges in every lift. We'll do a challenge at the end of every practice. Communication, we set commitment. So that's turning in your dominator every day. And then energy is whoever volunteers the most in our community service project, whoever's early and on time and does anything, we add points. So at the end of the semester, whichever team has the most points, I'm going to get them shoes or something. So it's a little bit of, but so honestly, it's just being intentional with our dialogue. But additionally, it's you wouldn't think that a group of 19 to 23, sometimes 24-year-olds would be dying for a high C juice box.
Right.
But it's something so our fall World Series is the Juice Box World Series.
That's awesome.
So we make a tower of juice boxes. And it's a big deal. People I've had so many people ask me when are we doing the juice box? And so
that's
it's
really
just
cool.
Little stuff like that. Yeah.
If I don't have any eligibility left and I've got a bad hip, I got a bad hamstring, I got everything's breaking down on me. Brandon will tell you because I complain to him all the time. But if I didn't, I would want to play for you. I'm telling you right now.
It's funny you said that because I'm thinking how do we bring this episode to a close? And all I can think about is I want my kid to play for this guy. I want my 13-year-old to have an opportunity sometime to play for a coach like JT. I mean, that is, you are doing the right stuff, my guy. I mean, for real, it's really impressive.
What JT, what was it about Salem? We should have asked you that earlier, but what was it that attracted you to that opportunity, that particular one?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a sleeping giant in a really competitive region. So we at Salem, I mean, we have all the resources we would need. I mean, we have a new turf field and we have a new turf indoor facility.
Nice.
We have a full-time strength coach and a new weight room. And essentially I came in and they were like, hey, you can do what you like. Don't worry about wins and losses right away. Develop your program. You have autonomy. Bring us in players, get us players.
Right.
Kids I couldn't be like, hey, I need to develop a program with 10 guys. I mean, it's college baseball, but get players here, but do it your way. So to me, I was like, I mean, you could have put me in a desert somewhere and I would have been like, yeah, I got to go do this. But so what that looked, so the reason, so we're bringing in guys that, we're bringing in guys that have no business in the past coming here, just because we have that, like, almost that full autonomy to be like, this is exactly what we want to do.
Right.
We have, like, I'm getting scouts to come to practices. I'm getting, we have a bunch of pro guys coming to work out with us, and, an unbelievable coaching staff, solely because it was like, hey, do it however whatever you can do, go do it.
And you loaded that schedule. I mean, that's no cupcake schedule. I mean, it's like, hey, boys, we're going to go ahead and throw you to the wolves here for a little while, but, enjoy.
Yeah. So to be honest, in hindsight, obviously at the time, it's not easy going 10-30.
Yeah.
But, and I said to you, John, the thing I have written in my hat every single day I read, I was like, you can't, like, do not compromise the culture.
Yeah.
It was extremely hard. It was easy, but it was extremely hard at times.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't say we left wins on the field, but, I said to you, John, and I don't mind sharing this. I mean, we win our first game against Concord. My first win in my career as a head coach at the collegiate level. We win it under the lights. It's probably one of the best games I've ever been a part of. We come back and play Concord the next day in the morning. I have 4 seniors, 3 of which are position players, start to show up late. So I have a decision to make. It's like, well,
right.
do I play these guys or do I not play them? Well, I look in my hat. It says, don't compromise the culture. One of our we got to be on time. So I don't play those guys. We end up winning that game.
Right.
But, and there's other instances too, where it was constantly challenging because this was new and there's those guys, I love them. Like, there's a lot, like,
sure,
those guys aren't mad at me for it. If they are mad at me for it, those guys end up finishing, because it's like, look, if you can't do this when you're playing college baseball, I don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Because this is the easiest it ever gets. But at the end of the day, it was, we put together, we had the hard schedule in Division II baseball, and, we harped the ball so much that, like, I feel like we're going to be in a really good spot for this year with who we're returning, because they went through the ringer of being on the road 30 games against some of the best teams.
Right. It's an intentional discomfort, to borrow our boy Andy Reese's, line there, is that you put them in those uncomfortable situations, but you get used to it, and it's going to be tough. It's embrace the suck. It's everything you can think about, from that standpoint. So how are you, is there anything that you surprised you for those first couple of years? I mean, anything that you were like, man, oh man, this is a little bit different about being the head coach, because that's a different ball game. I mean, everybody, that assistant coach thing, and then you make that, slide over one seat, and there's a lot more on you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest surprise, like on a side of it, kind of like, whoa, threw me back, was the level, like I said, I was like, look, we're not hiding from anybody. I'll play the Yankees if they're available.
Yeah.
Was honestly the level of teams we played. So I seriously mean that we didn't have a bad team last year, but you go to North Greenville on the road, and they play their best game, it's hard to beat them.
Yeah.
We had a lot of, we played at Mercyhurst and beat them by 10 runs in the first game, and then lost. We got walked off twice the next 2 games.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that to me was like, wow, this is incredible to see, the level of play at, college baseball in the area. But then 2, the level of cause the things that we're doing, where, I'm almost embarrassed to go shake this other coach's hand sometimes. Not like the sense of,
right.
like when I don't want to lose 2
right.
doubleheader.
Yeah.
I respect we played some of the best coaches in the country this year, but honestly, like, the respect and, how grateful I was to at Georgia, which if you look into their facility and programming, he's one of the best coaches in all of Division II. To me for 10 minutes at home plate about how elated he was of the things we do, from sweeping the dugout and how we take the field. I'm like,
who was that, JT? You broke up there for a second. Who was that coach?
Tom Cantrell at North Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's not too far from Brandon.
I was going to say North Georgia is about 25 minutes from me.
Yeah. And, and we played, like Mercyhurst and Concord. I mean, their coaches too, they have no reason, we just battled with them for,
right.
5, we had Mercyhurst 5 times, Concord 3, for them to pull me aside and say, hey, keep your head up. You're doing all the right things. We enjoy competing against you. It to me, that was a really big surprise, to where, those guys are just salt of the earth guys, that they don't have to do those things.
Did you get any advice from one of those coaches this year that really stuck with you?
Yeah, I mean, the overall message from I think of like Coach Garrett from Concord, and then Cantrell.
Yeah, he's great. Kevin's Georgia. A great guy.
Yeah, I mean, they came to us with like we actually, it was weird. They came to us with like 15, 16 guys early in the year, and then we had to do the same thing down there because of COVID. It was like both when we played them. But the message from a lot of these guys talking to them was like, you have to continue to do what you're doing. Like, don't ever second guess. If it's for the players, like if it's for the benefit of the program and the players, you have to continue to do it. And unfortunately, when that comes to, sometimes there's guys who just aren't meant to be in your program. Yeah. And that was really hard for me, where it's like, hey, I'm going to work with this guy. But at the end of the day, you got to make sure, hey, if this is what's best for the team and for the players and the individuals on your team, go for it, even if you lose baseball games. And I was like, wow, that's coming from some really successful guys. That was really cool to hear.
No, and look, I mean, it's stay true to yourself, all of those things. And I got to tell you, and I feel like we're, all of a sudden you're instant hype guys, but what you're doing is fantastic. And I respect it so much. I know Brandon does too. It's so refreshing to see a young coach like yourself who's already dialed into some of the most important things when it comes to developing culture, having a standard for the program, making sure to hold people accountable for that standard. And more importantly, JT, what's going to happen is so cool is you start to see some of these players come back in 8 years and 10 years and 12 years, and you've held them to this standard. And now they're better men and better husbands and fathers because of the fact that you really said, this is the way we're going to do things here at Salem. And that's just the way it's going to be,
Well, I really appreciate that, guys, because what you guys are doing is extremely next level as well. Like, I'm just grateful to be on here, but I've learned I've learned so much from listening to you guys. Like I said, I feel like I've known you guys for a really long time now. So yeah, it's cool to actually have a back and forth with you. But and we talked about it earlier, like me, I'm learning just as much as you guys are. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like executing this and making it more of a mastery with my understanding of pace and explaining to it is just as beneficial. So I'm really just grateful to be here, talk to you guys.
No, it's great. We can't thank you enough for joining us. And trust me, this will not be your first, your one and only. Brandon, I always get that wrong.
You do mess that one up, but I think he knows he's coming back.
Anytime, guys. Seriously, thank you. This was great.
No, best of luck with the season. I know you guys, you're cranking up when in a week you're going to have the players come on the campus and be ready to go.
Yep, we start a little bit later. Guys come back a week from today, so we're really excited.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, I tell you what, if you get back down to North Georgia, if you come to Tennessee this year, let us know because we'll make a trip one way or the other. Brandon will make the run up here to the Nashville area, or I'll head down to North Georgia, and we'll be
I'm
rocking the Salem stuff.
Looking for the schedule.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's going to be awesome. Well, we wish you luck and have a great fall, and can't wait to have you back on the show and break down some of those things. But we just appreciate you joining us tonight.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.